Hello everybody and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. On today's show we're going to be looking back at the 4 WSL games that happened this weekend and the Subway Cup final. We're going to be looking ahead to the 6 games coming up this weekend as well. I'm going to be your host, Stattorino.
I'm Izzy, Duddy.
And I'm Jacob Bernstein.
Yes, welcome listener. It is another week gone in the WSL and we are back here to review it on Decoding the WSL, and I've got 2 guests with me today coming back both for their second appearances. The first voice you heard there was one of the women behind Fantasy WSL and now Fantasy NWSL as well. It is Izzy Duddy. Izzy, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, we now have another game. It's successfully out, so I'm feeling a lot better. Life is a lot less stressful.
One less secret to hold.
Yeah. When I last spoke to you, I was keeping tight-lipped about that one, but we can talk about it now.
Yeah, because when you last came on, we did a bit of quite a long Fantasy WSL feature, and one of the things I asked was, is there anything else that you're sort of going to be adding to the game? And I thought you might say like there'd be an extra chip that you were going to add in, or I don't know, something like that. I wasn't expecting an actual full new game, but it was a good surprise. The other guest we've got on this week, coming back for his second appearance, is analyst Jacob Bernstein. Jacob, how are you? Thank you for coming back on.
No, thank you for having me. I am all good, thank you. Unfortunately, I'm coming on after another Spurs loss, so hopefully next time I'm on, I'm coming off the back of a Spurs win. Let's hope.
Well, I obviously, as an Arsenal fan, I might try and invite you on every week just so that Spurs lose every week, because it might be the happy omen for me. But yeah, let's have, before we get into, it's going to be a relatively quick fire pod this week because there is a lot to cover. We've obviously got matches that have just happened this weekend and matches coming up. So yeah, it's going to be pretty quick. We're going to start off with a little review of the weekend's games just gone. There were 2 games in Merseyside on Friday night with one big upset. The Toffees couldn't get the better of Arsenal, but Liverpool continued their new manager bounce under Amber Whiteley, scoring 3 against the best defence in the league of Man United. Saturday saw no WSL action, but the first final of the season and a first trophy at Chelsea for Sonia Bompastor. Back to the WSL on Sunday, and the Eagles now aren't flying quite so close to the sun. Now they've got their first home win of the season, seeing off relegation rivals Aston Villa 3-1. And then finally, it was Brighton's time to shine as they got the only clean sheet of the weekend in a win away at Spurs. But we're going to start the pod with the Subway Cup final. Yes, the Subway Cup final was Chelsea 2, Man City 1. Mauro Ramirez opening the scoring in the 8th minute, an early goal. Alba Fugino levelling the game in the second half, and then Chelsea winning it with a sort of cross turned in very unfortunately for her by Yui Hasegawa. It was obviously a first trophy at Chelsea for Sonia Bompastor, part of a really good unbeaten run that is still continuing in the big games as well. Jacob, you watched, you were the only one of us 3 that watched the game in full. How was sort of your viewing of the game? How did you read it?
You know what? It was actually a really interesting battle. Obviously, it was the first out of 4 games in the Chelsea v Man City saga. And naturally, in a cup final, you may think that it may start a bit cagey, neither team kind of going for it. But Chelsea took the lead really early on, and it was actually a really well worked goal. It started all the way from the back. Hannah Hampton took her goal kick and passed it to Sondi Baltimore, who played it to Katerina Macario. She shrugged off her marker, played it into Lauren James, who played a perfectly weighted ball through to Myra Ramirez. So all of that build-up play was really nice. Myra Ramirez took a shot, it was actually saved, and then she scored the rebound. So the actual goal was a bit messier, but it was lovely build-up play. After the Chelsea goal, though, there was actually a massive momentum swing in City's favour. City had a lot of chances, but a lot of their chances ended up being more half chances than big chances. So I think you'll see that a lot of their chances were kind of a lot of their chances had kind of like 0.1 XG, for example, because a lot of their chances were blocked by brilliant defending all game from Millie Bright, Natalie Bjorn, and Sonny Baltimore. So there was a massive momentum swing, and it looked like City were going to get back into the game. And then towards the half-hour mark, Chelsea had a huge chance to make it 2-0. Myra Ramirez was put through again. The City defence was nowhere to be seen. She rounded the goalkeeper and actually hit the side netting with her shot. And I think that registered as like a 0. I'm just double checking. I think it was something like a 0.8 XG chance. So it was 1-0 Chelsea going into half time. And then, City got the equaliser on 64 minutes. A brilliant goal from Alba Firmino, who scored an equally very good goal against Spurs a couple of weeks back. The second half was maybe a bit more cagey, but then in the end, Chelsea found the winner. Not in the style you kind of want to see a cup, a cup winner and a cup won. Yui Hasegawa with an own goal. I think if you look at the XG, it's really interesting because Chelsea's XG was 2.78 versus Man City's 1.94. But actually, Chelsea accumulated 1.95 XG from 2 chances. That was Myra Ramirez's initial shot that led to her goal, her first goal, and her chance that ended up hitting the side netting. So Chelsea only created 0.83 XG outside of those 2 chances, whereas City created a lot, as I mentioned before, a lot of 1.9, a lot of small XG chances. I guess that was kind of the tail of the game. It will be interesting to see how the other games go in regards to their Champions League and WSL matches. I'd say City were much the dominant side, and Chelsea ended up being more clinical and getting the win.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how these 4 matches go, especially with obviously Nick Cushing in charge, taking over from Gareth Taylor. It's quite a big change in one go. I'll set the scene a little bit for you, listener. We are 15 minutes away from that game starting, the Champions League game. So you might get some very out of date news by the time you listen to this pod as goals go in. So I wanted to ask you as well, Jacob, is that I've seen a lot on social media, especially after last night's game as well, the Arsenal game in Real Madrid, a lot of talk about pitch quality. Pride Park, it looked shit, to be honest. It looked really bad. Not just in terms of it's a poor thing to watch because it looks a bit budget, but also that it kind of looks a bit unsafe. And when you're playing at what is realistically the top level in the country for these players, they should have better pitches and should have better facilities. And places like Pride Park should be able to accommodate that. We've obviously seen people like Ian Wright. I think the PFA have put a statement out about pitch qualities and it being a big influence and a factor that needs to be clubs and competitions need to do better around it. Do you think in this game that it made sort of any difference to the outcome? Because obviously under Gareth Taylor, Man City were very possession heavy, which would really lead to you'd need a nice pitch to play that sort of football. But I don't know, did they play it any different under Nick Cushing? And if so, do you think that was because of the pitch? Do you think that's just how he's going to play? What do you think?
It's a really difficult one. Obviously, as you said, kind of both the Chelsea City game and the Arsenal Real Madrid game last night both had poor pitch quality, and there's no doubt that does have an impact. It is really hard to quantify almost like what that impact is. As you said, kind of a better pitch suits the more possession style of play. I think maybe Chelsea actually did play more of a possession game. I think they controlled the middle of the park quite well. I was honestly so impressed with Stattorino Macario's running. I just thought she controlled like that attacking midfield area of the game, playing some like really nice through balls. So I don't know, I maybe didn't notice it. I obviously noticed it visually, but maybe in the game, like quantifiably, not so much. I think there has to be a big push to ensure like the standards of the pitch and the standards of everything around the game are up to scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if nothing else, it just makes it a better spectacle as well, because you get probably better quality football being played, but also it kind of just looks nicer on the TV and things like that, and you're more likely to. I think it's one of those little things that would just make people a little bit more likely to watch, or a little bit less likely to tune out anyway. But let's get on to the WSL, because obviously that's what this pod is all about. I want to start off with one of the games on Sunday, the one which I did say beforehand would be the biggest game of the weekend in the WSL, and I think I was probably proved correct, which was Palace hosting Villa. This one finished 3-1 for the home side, a huge result in the relegation battle. Palace getting their first home win of the season, and Villa still yet to win an away match. Palace are now just 1 point behind Aston Villa in the WSL table. Obviously, Palace is still last with 9th. Villa are 1 point ahead, and Leicester are only 3 points ahead of Palace. So it started to hot up a little bit into a bit of a relegation battle. Obviously, we didn't really have one last season because Bristol was so far behind. But Palace are putting in, a bit of a fight now. Izzy, I want to throw this one to you because I want to know who your favourite is for relegation now. Because Palace are a team, I guess, well, they've got a bit of a new manager bounce, obviously, with Leif Smurrid. Villa haven't really had a new manager bounce under Arroyo, and the Leicester are just slipping into this battle as well. How do you think this is going to play out?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to come down to the last game. I think I was looking at the fixtures, and I think, on paper maybe Villa have the easier fixtures, but I actually think the momentum's behind Palace now. And personally, I caught the highlights of that game, and I just think it seemed like such a really nice, positive atmosphere there. I'm kind of rooting for them as the sort of underdogs of this situation, because I just think I have no idea what's going on at Villa, but it's just been poor, and it's several games now that they've lost, and they're clearly in a bit of a slump. So I think if Palace can take advantage of that, I actually think there could be a bit of a shock, and we could see potentially a Villa relegation.
I think with Villa finishing, was it 2 seasons ago when they finished 5th? Obviously with Carla Ward, and that was sort of like, they'll push on now. They finished, I think it was 10th last season, and now they're sort of 1 point away from getting relegated. They do have, I think it's something like 10 or 15 better goal difference than Palace. So if they finish level on points, Villa will probably stay up. But it's certainly getting a bit squeaky bum time down at that bottom of the league. I think it's a really good advert for why we should keep relegation in the WSL. There's obviously a lot of talk about that at the moment as well. Jacob, what about you? Who do you think is going to be the team that's going to end up going down?
Yeah, I think it's really close. You literally just said exactly what I was going to say. This is an advert for why you need to keep relegation in the league, because if relegation was scrapped, the Palace Villa game would have very little relevance. But now, the Palace win is huge. If Villa had won or it had been a draw, it would be really hard for Palace to kind of get back. But now it's really close. And as Izzy said, I've looked at the fixtures as well, and Palace have West Ham and Leicester at home, I think, in their third last and second last games of the season. So maybe it's targeting that Palace Leicester fixture, as that's the 6-pointer that will maybe decide who will stay up and who will go down. Villa have a couple of difficult fixtures. They're playing United, Liverpool, and Arsenal, I think, in like 3 of the next 4 games. So maybe they'll get dragged even further down if Palace can keep up the momentum. It's really hard to tell, but it's an interesting battle.
It'd be really interesting as well to see what Villa do if they do end up going down, and I guess Palace, because they both recently got new managers. Leicester at least have had Amandine Mikel for the full season, and if they end up going down, it's not necessarily a surprise if a team sacks their manager after getting relegated. But if you've only had your manager in for 2 or 3 months and you get relegated, it's then, well, what do you do then? I think Natalia Arroyo signed something like a 3.5-year deal as well, so she's going to be expensive to get rid of if they do that. Let's move on to another one of the other 3-1 games this weekend. This one was on Friday night. Liverpool 3, Man United 1. Liverpool having a really good run under Amber Whiteley. Their new manager bounce is going really well. They've sort of changed formation a bit from a 3-5-2 under Matt Beard into this like 4-2-3-1, and it's doing wonders for them. Man United have conceded, or I should say, a third of the goals Man United have conceded in the WSL this season were in this one game. Liverpool just, I don't know what it was exactly. They just seemed to unlock something in Man United that Man United were helpless against them. Izzy, how did you see this game?
Well, I think, not to make it all about Arsenal, but I think that win over Arsenal in the Cup, I think, that's done Liverpool wonders, and not to kind of credit it all back to one game, but I think psychologically they were playing at Anfield. They've just come off the back of beating Arsenal. They've got a new manager. I just think, it's like you say, it's almost like it's just that click psychologically, I think. And I wouldn't be surprised if they carry on their winning run, because it seems like they've just kind of figured each other out. Maybe it's a change of formation, maybe it's just having a fresh pair of eyes. There was clearly something slightly weird going on with Matt Beard. I mean, there was some tensions between, whether it was between the manager and sort of senior management, but maybe they're just relaxing into it a bit.
I think there was a bit of movement in terms of where players are getting played as well. I know Cornelia Potts came back in. I don't think she's played or much, if she has played recently. But Olivia Smith, rather than getting played sort of in the 2 of the 3-5-2 and sort of attacking down the middle, she was put out wide and did really well on that right wing. They sort of doubled up. Grace Clinton moved out into that left back position as well to help, and it still didn't really make too much of a difference. I know she obviously scored the first goal by basically just a change of pace against Grace Clinton. Did a round, and a shot that fell into his joy she would expect her to make. I don't know if there was something else around that as well. Once she'd made one mistake in the day, had her head gone a little bit or something. I don't know, but I think this could be a game that's going to be really important when looking at the top 3 this season. Obviously, there's only 3 Champions League spots. Chelsea will get one of them. I don't think anyone's worried about that. But then Arsenal, Man United and Man City are sort of fighting for 2 spots. If you'd have asked me last week, I'd have said it's probably Man United and then it's between Arsenal and Man City. I think after this result, I think I'd probably say that City and Arsenal are my 2 favourites for the positions now. Man United have obviously got... There is a way of getting through Man United. Liverpool have shown that. It might be a blueprint other teams can use. Man United have obviously got quite difficult fixtures. I think they've still got to play City again, and they've definitely still got to play Arsenal on the final day, which could have a big impact on what happens. Jacob, how... Obviously, I didn't want to ask Izzy this one because I know that she might be as biased as I am, but as someone that's not involved in that sort of top 3 battle, how do you think this is going to play out? Because you've got 3 teams going for 2 spaces and someone's going to miss out.
Yeah, it's difficult to know. Honestly, I think it's hard to know where to focus the analysis of this Liverpool United game, whether to focus on like a massive result for Liverpool, and you've got to give Liverpool credit, or the loss of momentum for United. Like, look, I have no doubt Chelsea are going to go and win the league, but if United had beaten Liverpool, United would have been 5 points behind Chelsea, with Chelsea and City playing each other this weekend, and suddenly you could be talking about United closing the gap on Chelsea rather than getting dragged into the top 4 conversation with Arsenal and City. I think, it's really difficult to say. I think Arsenal's fixture list going into the back end of the season is pretty kind, because they've already played Chelsea and City. Whereas, as you mentioned, there are a lot of clashes between the other teams at the top. And with City's change of manager, it's very hard to predict. So I'm going to go with Arsenal and United to take the Champions League places, I think.
Very interesting. I was actually just having a look at the team sheets for tonight's game, as in for the Champions League game, kicks off in 3 minutes. And Man City have rotated quite a lot. Bunny Shaw's not in the squad at all. We think she might have come off injured at the weekend. Viv Miedemar's on the bench. And then there's not a full squad, so they've not even brought up some youngsters, etc. Chelsea have gone for pretty much a full strength side in this game, which leads me to think that they unsurprisingly are prioritising the Champions League games over the WSL game at the weekend. And Man City are sort of the other way around. So Man City might be able to get the better of Chelsea this weekend as well, which will really help if Chelsea, I suppose, if Chelsea rests some players. But if there's a team that you can't get by resting players, it's going to be Chelsea, because when they rest players, they're probably pretty much still just as strong and still a world-class side. Anyway, they were the sort of the two main games that I want to focus on from this weekend, because it has big implications at both sides of the table. The other two that were on were Everton 1, Arsenal 3. This was on Friday night. Arsenal are now on the longest winning run in the WSL of just 4 games, which surprised me when I saw that. I sort of forgot that Chelsea haven't won every game. From the stats in this game, because I didn't watch this, I only watched the highlights, but it looked like a lot of the Arsenal players sort of had a pretty average game. No one really played amazingly well, and it was just sort of Alessia Russo did quite well and showed why she's one of the best strikers, or not just strikers, one of the best forward players in the league. I can see Izzy nodding her head along to that as well. Izzy, you watched this game. How did you enjoy it? How did you see it?
I think enjoy was a stretch. I think Arsenal. I'm surprised to hear that actually they're on a winning streak, because it doesn't feel they're not playing like they are. Maybe I'm tainted by the Champions League game last night, but I think watching them play Everton, obviously everyone was expecting them to win. Alessia's amazing. She scored some great goals, but Everton got one back, and it was once again pretty shocking defence from Arsenal. And I think, I worry that they're kind of muddling in the middle, and they need to, if they want to get those Champions League spots, they need to sort of win every game here out. So, watching that game, I think while Arsenal won, and I think it wasn't really in doubt that they won. They didn't win convincingly for me. And I think, like you say, it's sort of the moments of excellence from Alessia Russo, and actually Beth Mead as well came on and did some. Seemed to be back in form, which was really nice, because she's sort of been quite quiet recently. So with the exception of those two, there was nothing outstanding for me.
Yeah, it is always nice to see Beth Mead doing well as well, because she's obviously got quite a big change, I guess, this season, obviously with Viv Miedemar moving away. But it's good to see that she's still putting in really good performances, because those sort of things, although it's not one of those things that you'd necessarily think about straight away, but as they are human beings, and those sort of things will affect players. But yeah, it is a pretty routine, expected result. If you didn't know anything about the game and just saw that Arsenal had beaten Everton 3-1, you wouldn't really think too much of it. You could have said that at the start of the season, you wouldn't think too much of it. And yeah, just another one of those games, I guess. And nice to see that, well, from an Arsenal perspective anyway, that they haven't played that well but have still won, because you very, very rarely get a team that plays well in every game, and the great teams will play badly and still win. The part of the issue with Arsenal is that sometimes they play well and don't win, but that hopefully will be an easier thing for them to overcome in time. The final WSL game that was on this weekend was Spurs 0, Brighton 1. Brighton are the only team to keep a clean sheet in their last WSL match. Obviously, they were the only team this weekend, and there were some midweek ones a couple of weeks ago. But from what I've read, and obviously I didn't watch this one either, but from what I've read and heard on other podcasts and stuff, it sounds like Brighton were fine. And it was more that Spurs didn't score, not because Brighton was so good defensively, but because Spurs weren't very good going forward. There wasn't a lot of creativity. They didn't get a shot on target in the game. Is that sort of a fair review of it, Jacob?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think frustrating is probably the word that I'd use to describe the game. I'd just come off the back of watching Spurs men lose to Fulham. So I had consecutive Spurs losses, which made my Sunday afternoon very miserable. But yeah, I think the kind of the story of the game going into it was obviously it was a kind of a 6-pointer in mid-table, and the news kind of came through that Beth England had been ruled out of the game through injury. It wasn't really reported how long for. We've since heard that it's going to be a couple of weeks. I think, honestly, that's probably the difference between Spurs potentially scoring in that game and getting a result out of it and not. You can really see the impact of Beth England not in the team. She's scored 8 WSL goals for us this season, and really been our main goal threat, especially when players like Martha Thomas, Jess Naz and Hayley Razzo haven't been on the best of form. And yeah, it just felt like we couldn't really create any chances. We had no link-up play. But I thought Brighton were good, to be fair. I thought Frank Kirby and Nikita Paris both ran the game really well. And Frank Kirby's goal was very well taken. I think Brighton were probably well deserved for their victory. But yeah, from a Spurs perspective, it was frustrating. I think the only positives to take out of it were I thought Lisa Kopp had a good performance again. She made a number of decent saves, as she has been doing since she joined in January. And also, I was very impressed, as always, by Ella Morris, who in every appearance she's made, which hasn't been too many because of her injury during the mid-season, Ella Morris was brilliant defensively, but also she was probably our biggest attacking threat down the right-hand side. She had a chance quite late on to equalise, but ended up going, I think, either wide or over. But yeah, that's now 4 WSL losses for us in a row, which is disappointing. And with Beth England now out for a couple of weeks, I'm very worried where our goal threat's going to be coming from.
Yeah, I think if I was a Spurs fan, I'd be worried about that as well. Beth England, I was just looking at Spurs players that have scored in the WSL this season. Other than Beth England, the only player to have scored more than one is Evelina Summerlin. She scored 2. So it's not like don't get me wrong, there's a few players that have scored 1 goal, but you've not got a player that you're like, oh, when they play, there's, they're getting a goal every other game or something like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Spurs do going forward, but I won't press you too much on this game because, like you said, it was a double loss for Spurs this weekend, and I don't want you being too sad. We'll move on from the games that happened this weekend just gone, and let's look ahead to what's coming up this weekend. So the first game that I want to focus on is the third game of 4 for City against Chelsea, the only of these that is in the WSL. This one is at Man City on Sunday at 2:30. Soon to be out of date football news, it's currently in the 5th minute and it's still 0-0. And only Man City have had a shot so far. So see how this keeps going. But I'm interested to see what happens this weekend. I think, especially looking at the lineups of these teams at the moment, I'm sort of like kind of live reacting to it because I've forgotten about Shaw going off injured. It seemed that I saw that she'd sort of made a gesture over to Nick Cushing and came off a couple of minutes later. And then obviously she's not even named in the squad tonight for a Champions League game. I think that if she is back for the weekend, happy days. I think City will probably beat Chelsea because I think Chelsea are just going to be resting a lot of players. And I think City know, especially with that Man United slip up, there's a chance now for them to get in. Nick Cushing has probably got something in his contract that he gets some kind of bonus if he manages to get Man City into the Champions League this season. So I think I'm still going to go for, I said it before and I'm going to stick with it. I do still think it's going to be a City win this weekend. Izzy, how do you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, I think definitely not a City loss is what I will say. I think even with Shaw out, I would put quite a lot of stock in Fowler, Miedemar, and also Alba Fagino, who I think has been one of the players of the season, to be honest. And it seems like she's starting to find the back of the net a lot more. So I don't necessarily think that, they need Shaw to beat Chelsea. I guess, yeah, it just depends who's getting rested for Chelsea and to the extent to which they're happy to kind of prioritise their Champions League fixture. But who knows? If City beat Chelsea tonight, it could be a completely other story. But yeah, I'm not sure that's happening.
Yeah, I almost don't want to dwell on it too much because whatever we say now, by the time this result has happened in 90 minutes'
We'll be
time,
wrong.
yeah, it might be completely out the window. And what was the point in us doing that? So we won't waste each other's time. We won't waste your time, listener. Let's move on to some of the other matches that are on this weekend. We've got Everton hosting Crystal Palace. This one was 1-1 earlier in the season. It was actually the first time they'd ever faced each other. Obviously, Everton have been Everton have been around for a while, but Palace have only just this season got up into the WSL, and they've never faced each other in any cup competition either, which I thought was interesting. I think it's going to be a game where, if you asked me this last week, I'd be like, oh, it's going to be an easy Everton win because they're in pretty good form, especially since Christmas, and Palace aren't. But there might be a bit of a momentum swing. There might be a bit of confidence swing after this weekend's results. The weekend just gone, sorry. Jacob, what do you think? How do you think Everton Palace is going to play out?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I think it'll be a tight game. This doesn't help, and this is definitely sitting on the fence. But I think it will probably be one goal in it or a draw. I can't really see there being a runaway winner. If I had to kind of make a decision now, I'd probably favour Everton just because they're at home. They've won a couple of games. They've had a couple of wins in the last few WSL games, and yeah, it'll be a close battle because of Palace's momentum from their win. But I'll go with an Everton win.
Yeah, I think Leif Smirrid is going to be doing all he can to get Palace to keep that momentum going, even though it is a bit of a trek, actually, isn't it, up to Everton for them. The next game I want to touch on is Arsenal against Liverpool. I'm especially looking forward to this one because I'm going to it. There has not been a match in their last 7 meetings between these two teams where both teams have scored, which I thought was quite interesting. And in the last 4 meetings, the away team has won either 1-0 or 2-0. I think 3 of those were in the league and one of them was in the cup. Obviously, the last time Liverpool came to the Emirates was the start of last season, the first game when they won 1-0. It was a pretty big shock, I think it's fair to say. Liverpool certainly had a good time, and it was not a happy memory for Arsenal. But yeah, as we've said, Liverpool are enjoying a new manager bounce. Arsenal are kind of surprisingly on the best winning streak in the league, even if it doesn't feel like it. Izzy, how do you think this one's going to play out? Because it seems to be kind of 2 informed teams.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Part of me wants to say Liverpool will take the win, but I do think Arsenal will clinch it just because they'll want their revenge for the cup, and also it is the Emirates. And I know it was the Emirates when Liverpool beat us there in that 1-0 victory. And to be honest, I was there and it was literally like dire. It was a horrible day. But I think people are going to be showing up for it. I think it's going to be a big day. And I think Arsenal have had a pretty bad midweek game in the Champions League as well. So I think they're going to be pulling out all the stops for this one. But I am expecting goals at both ends.
I think the other thing that I'm a little bit wary of is that Arsenal don't pull out all the stops for it, because it will be really easy for Arsenal if they don't put out a really good side and if they don't go into it with the right attitude. It'll be really easy to slip up in this game against a good side. But at the same time, you've got Real Madrid visiting next week, and you've got a 2-goal deficit at the moment, and you need to perform in that game. So it'll be interesting to see what Renée Slagers does in terms of rotation, in terms of, I guess, tactics with this as well. Whether she goes back to playing Zinsberger, because obviously she played her last week. We'll have to wait and see. The next game I want to touch on, I'm going to go back to you for this one, Jacob, because it's Spurs. They are away at West Ham. You did just say about Spurs not being so free scoring at the moment if Beth England's not in the team, but both teams have scored the last 5 times that these have met. West Ham, however, are probably in slightly better form than Spurs. They're unbeaten in their last 3 home games, and if they can win this, they will actually go above Spurs in the league, which seems silly to me. It doesn't seem like West Ham are close enough to Spurs. Spurs seem to have a really good start to the season, like a good enough start, and West Ham didn't. But yeah, West Ham have just been picking up quite a few points along the way, and they'll be looking at this game thinking they can definitely win.
Yeah, as I said, I think I'm quite pessimistic going into it. I think, as I mentioned before, I'm just questioning where our goal threat is coming from. And through watching West Ham, they've had some good performances recently. I think they have their goal threat in Shakira Martinez, who's looked really good in recent weeks. I West Ham actually knocked us out of the Subway Cup in the quarterfinal, and I was there. And honestly, that was probably one of the worst watches of the season. We lost 2-1. It was just so frustrating, and we were trying to play long ball, and it just wasn't really working. And we also played West Ham in the league and won 2-1, but it was a scrappy game, and we scored a last minute winner that ended up being an own goal. So I think he'll be close, but as I said, I'm really questioning where our goals are going to come from on the week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I think it would definitely be a close game. I could see it ended up being like a 1-0 or something like that. But to be honest, to either team, because I think Spurs do have it in them to dig deep and get a result, especially when you're in a bit of a dire state, which I guess you could kind of say you are without Beth England at the moment and needing someone else to step up. Next game I'm going to touch on is Leicester hosting Brighton. The last time Leicester hosted Brighton was almost to the day last season in March. It finished 3-2 to Brighton, and weirdly, I don't think any of the goal scorers are likely to feature in this game. Jutta Rantala and Lena Peterman scored for Leicester. They are both out injured at the moment. I think Lena Peterman has been seen running at Leicester, but she hasn't been in a matchday squad yet. And then for Brighton, the goals came from Elisa Kopp own goal, who obviously doesn't play for Leicester anymore, and then Katie Robinson and Elizabeth Turland scoring for Brighton. So none of those are going to be in this game. It's going to be a fresh set of players to try and get some goals in. Leicester are, despite the fact that they're flirting with the relegation zone, they've won their last 2 home games. So they're in kind of good home form. They've made the King Power quite a fortress, even if they're not very good on the road. Brighton, obviously, have just picked up a win on the road as well. There was a strange stat I noticed when I was doing a bit of research for this, which is that Leicester haven't scored after the 60th minute in the WSL this season. They have just scored. They've scored, most of their goals, in the first half, and then a few in sort of the first 15 minutes of the second half. But yeah, after the hour mark, they tend to shut up shop. I think there's probably a little bit of a tactical part of that's on purpose, that they try and get to a state where they're winning, or at least getting a draw, and then they go, look, we're just going to shut the other side out. I don't know if that'll happen this weekend, but Izzy, how do you think this one's going to go?
Yeah, I think it will be a Brighton win, to be honest. I think it'll be closer than maybe we might expect, but Brighton just have excellent attacking threat. Like, Fran Kirby's back and she's scoring. Nikita Paris is really showing up, and she seems to be really settling into life in Brighton really well. And I don't think that the fact that it's an away game will really affect that too much. Brighton have some great travelling fans as well, so I'll be expecting them to turn up and make some noise. So yeah, I think I'm going to lean towards Brighton on this one.
They do actually. That's a good point. That they do have some really good travelling fans. I often see. I don't think I actually follow the supporters group, but I often see them posting on Twitter or something to say about the bus that they've got to go to matches. And I even remember seeing that when they went to, I can't remember if it was Liverpool or Everton, just after Christmas on like a Friday night. I was like, that is amazing commitment.
Yeah. Shout out to the girls.
Exactly. Yes, the She-Girls. Big fan of your work. Keep it up. The final game this weekend to touch on is Villa hosting Man United. These two teams have met each other 12 times in all competitions before. Villa have only won once, and that was on penalties in the Conti Cup back in October 2022. So Man United have definitely kind of got Villa's number a bit, and Villa are not in form. They've now lost their last 5 in a row. They are the most out of form team in the league. But obviously Man United didn't win this weekend, and maybe there is that blueprint of whatever the tactics that Liverpool used. Can Villa do that as well? Jacob, how do you see this game going?
Yeah, I think it's hard to look past anything but a United win, to be honest. But as you said, potentially the loss against Liverpool could swing the momentum, and potentially, yeah, could there be a formula there to scoring against United? I don't know, but yeah, I think it should be like service as normal for United, but who knows? Who knows?
Who knows, indeed. I think Mark Skinner will definitely be needing to get back into winning ways. I think if they drop out of the Champions League spots, I wouldn't be surprised to see, as anything happens, when anything negative happens to Mark Skinner, it's immediately, is he going to lose his job? Jim Ratcliffe seems to be on his side a bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if that changed pretty quickly. But they are the games that are coming up this weekend. That is a sort of relatively quick run through. As I mentioned, we've got a lot to get through this week. But yeah, let's move on to a segment that I love talking about every week, which is Fantasy WSL. Now, normally I would sort of start it off and touch on it, but as Izzy is here, and obviously she is part of the Fantasy WSL team, I'm just going to direct straight over to you. So, Izzy, what good little nuggets have you got for us this week?
All right, I want you both to guess who you think the highest riser has been this week.
Ooh.
So, which player has been transferred in the most?
Great question. I reckon it's probably going to be an Arsenal player or a Man United player because of the fixtures that they've got and the level of the teams. I'm going to say it's Alessia Russo.
All right, Jacob?
I'll go based on form rather than fixtures. In my head, I'm either thinking Alba Fagino or maybe Olivia Smith after her 2 goals for Liverpool. I'll go Fagino.
So, actually, Fagino doesn't even make the top 10. Russo was 5th, but it's actually Hayashi.
Oh, right.
And she was transferred in by 816 people, above Mariona Caldente, above Nikita Paris. I think, Jacob, you need to do a PSA to everyone because 534 people transferred Beth England in. So I don't think news of the injury has spread wildly. So there's going to be some really disappointed fantasy managers out there.
Yeah, Robert Villahan did say she was out for several weeks, so yeah, keep that in mind.
Oh, she's definitely going to be someone I'm transferring out this week. I transferred her in last week and then didn't see the news that she was out injured because I think it came out before the deadline, but I didn't see it until after the deadline. And at that point, obviously, I'm done. So I was a player down this week. So all of my subs were either Chelsea or Man City players, but never mind.
I mean, I will be steering clear of talking about my experience this week because it put me in a very bad mood. So I'm just going to focus on the hard stats of everyone else. I thought, interestingly, the fallers, all but one of the top 10 of people transferred out this week were either City or Chelsea players.
That's interesting.
So no one's hedging any bets. Wrighton and Broad are the top 2 transferred out. But yeah, Fowler, Ramirez, Miedemar, even Bunny Shaw, yeah. They're all being transferred out in quite large quantities. The only player, weirdly, that sort of wasn't a Chelsea or City player that's been transferred out is Katrina Gorey, which is not who I would pin as the person to transfer out because, to be honest, I personally think West Ham might have a decent chance this weekend. So, but the people have spoken.
Yeah, that surprised me a bit with Gorey because she's really good value this season. She's got a lot of points considering the fact that she's not been that expensive.
Yeah.
So I'm then surprised that people that have her would take her out.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite an interesting transfer in and out. I should say as well, Mi Kato was the 4th most transferred in player, which is really nice to see. Let's get some Palace representation up there. In terms of visionaries, pretty much well, the top 3 visionaries this week, scoring visionaries, were all Crystal Palace players. So I don't think that's any kind of surprise. Jasmine Matthews at Liverpool. She's actually been a really high scorer in fantasy for the last few weeks, and she is at 1% ownership. So if anyone needs a good defender out there, I would highly bank on her. I think there's quite a lot of value at the moment in the Liverpool squad in terms of bang for your buck. So if you're willing to bet on Liverpool, that would be my advice. Obviously, I haven't taken my own advice, so take everything I say with a pinch of salt. So those are our visionaries this week, and our top scoring team of the week got 80 points. I don't know how, but they just seem to have every single player that scored. So, kudos to, I think it was Philippa S. Kudos to them. I definitely couldn't do it. I think I got about 12 points or something.
Yeah, I think I didn't even get half of what Philippa S got. Normally I talk through how I did this week and what sort of transfers I'm going to make the next week, and I purposely did not do that this week because I was like, I just don't want to talk about it. But so what I do want to talk about is, obviously we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Fantasy WSL isn't the only game out there now, is it?
No, she has a little sister in the US. Fantasy NWSL has now been live for about just over a week. And it's going really well, actually. It's really fun to get into a whole different league. I mean, admittedly, I don't know half as much about the NWSL as I know about the WSL, but it's really interesting to kind of start to get your head around those different dynamics and points and who's kind of where, especially as the NWSL has the playoffs. So that will bring a slightly different element to the game, which we really look forward to when the time comes later this year.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same as you. I know obviously a decent amount about the WSL, but in terms of NWSL, I know like some of the main players, like people that play for the US team or Barbara Banda, people like that, and anyone that's basically transferred over from the WSL. But in terms of my actual NWSL knowledge, I did have to do a bit of a research.
And this is what fantasy is for, Sam.
Exactly, it's the way to get into it. Well, I said this with Fantasy WSL, that part of the reason that I was so excited for it to happen was that it helps people get into the league more, that are sort of in basically what I am with the NWSL, where I'm sort of, I know a little bit, and I know kind of, I could name most of the teams off the top of my head. Whereas, now I'm learning a bit more about the players, and some of the ones that I haven't heard of, I probably have only heard of less than half of my team before I made it. But I think I did all right. I finished above the average, but I would say that in the Stattorino League, I finished in the bottom half. So the Stattorino League, on average, is better than the average player, which that means listeners and everyone that follows me on social media, you're very clever. Well done. I should mention as well, we do have a Stattorino League, which you can join. So if you're getting quick ahead of this weekend's games, I think it's, I was going to say Friday night. I think it's like Saturday, 1 a.m. or something, the next game or the next deadline. But you can get in, use the code Decoding, all capitals, and that will get you into the Stattorino League, and come join. If you're not in there yet, you've only missed a week. So that is Fantasy WSL and I guess Fantasy NWSL as well. If you haven't started Fantasy NWSL yet, go make a team, get in ahead of this weekend, because there's a good chance that if you've only missed 1 week, there's plenty of football still to be played, plenty to get into, and it's always exciting as well. And it will also give something sort of alongside the Euros that are coming up as well. So when we've got a bit of a lull either side of the Euros before the WSL starts up again, or after it finishes, you've got something else to keep an eye on. But that is the Fantasy WSL segment for another week, and we're going to go on to a game of Know Your Stat. So, Know Your Stat is essentially a game of categories, but it's all based around the WSL. It is the game of the pod, is Decoding the WSL's game. Neither of you two have played this game before, so you are I guess, both making your debut of the game. But it's super simple. So I'm going to give you a category. This week, the answer for each of the 3 categories are all players in the WSL. You're going to take turns giving me an answer. If you give an incorrect answer or if you take too long, you will lose, basically, and the other person wins. You do need to get more answers than your opponent, more correct answers, I say, than your opponent to win. So, for example, Izzy, you're going to go first on the first round. If you give an incorrect answer, Jacob does need to give a correct answer to win. Okay, right. Izzy, you're going to answer first on the first round. So, Jacob, I'm going to ask you, would you like, for the first round, the one about the players, the one about goal scoring, or the one about creativity?
The one about players, sure.
Okay, so first round of Know Your Stat today. I would like you to name for me any player in the WSL this season that was born in 1992 or beforehand. So there are, I think off the top of my head, I should have counted this beforehand. There are 28 players that you can name. That will be correct answers. These players need to have at least been on the bench, even if they don't come on. There is only one player, I will say, that was on the bench and didn't come on the pitch. But yeah, anyone born 1992 or beforehand. Izzy, you are first.
Kim Little.
Kim Little is correct answer. She's 1990.
I'm going to get exposed here. Oh dear. Is Amy James Turner on it?
Amy James Turner is on the list. She is 1991.
I'm trying to think how old I am and work backwards from there.
Players that are 32 and older, basically.
Oh, I am gonna. Oh, Lucy Bronze.
Yeah, Lucy Bronze is correct answer.
Drew Spence.
Yep, Drew Spence is on the list. Just about. She is the, third youngest player on this list.
Okay, I'm gonna say Vicky Lasada.
Vicky Lasada is a correct answer. She's actually the 11th oldest player this season.
I'm going to go Becky Spencer.
Yeah, Becky Spencer's on there, just a little bit older. She is 11 days older than Lasada.
Do you know what the worst thing is when I've changed anyone or anything in Fantasy WSL, I get to see their birthday, and that is not helping me right now. I am. I'm gonna say Katrina Gorey.
Yeah, she's the correct answer. She was born in 92.
Oh dear, this could be ropes for me because I've now done 3 Spurs players.
I was about to say you've got to branch out.
Zinsberger.
Manuela Zinsberger is an incorrect answer. She was born in 1995.
She's the same age as me.
So, first round goes to Izzy. The players that you could have had that missed were Jordan Nobbs, Shalina Zadorsky, who is obviously a former Spurs player. Thought you might have got that. Lucy Staniforth, Adriana Leon, Jana Daniels, Justine Van Havermate, Kate Stengel, Rachel Daly, Danielle Turner, Dani Brandsdottir, Kenza Darley, Gemma Bonner, Katrin Veye, Christy Mewis, Laura Coombs, Rachel Laws, Mara Mielder, Rachel Corsi. She was named on the bench for 1 game, so she counted. Yanis Kamen, Rachel Williams, and the oldest player in the league is Neve Faye. So you got a few, but room for improvement in the next round, I would say.
Can I get a bonus point, Sam, for pointing out that Leon and Darley have left to go to the NWSL?
No. I mean,
I'm just being a know-it-all. Yeah.
It's well pointed out, but I just said they had to have been named on the bench in a WSL game this season.
Fair
or
enough.
at least on the bench, if not
Fair
played.
enough, that's true.
So this round is going to be Jacob going first, and Izzy, therefore you get to pick the round. So would you like the one about creativity or the one about shooting?
I'm going to say shooting.
Okay. So this round, I would like you to name for me any player that has accumulated at least 3 XG in the WSL this season. There are 28 players on the list. Jacob first.
Bunny Shaw.
Yeah, she's number 1 with 8.3.
Alessia Russo.
Yep. Number 2, 7.7.
Beth England.
Yep, 6.4.
Vivasei.
Vivasei's 13th, but is a correct answer, 4.5.
Mariana Caldente.
Yep, just above, 4.9.
Mary Fowler.
Mary Fowler is 3.6, so just about.
Grace Clinton.
Grace Clinton, I don't think is on the list. Grace Clinton has 2.7 XG this season. Is an incorrect answer, but as Jacob went first, Izzy does need to get a correct answer.
I had one in my head. Myra Ramirez.
Myra Ramirez has accumulated 2.6 XG, so it is another incorrect answer. So Jacob, you're back in the game.
Nikita Paris.
Yeah, she is 6th, 5.6 XG.
Fran Kirby.
Fran Kirby is on 3.7, thanks to 2 penalties that she's taken as well. Otherwise, she'd be on about 2.
Viviana Miedemar.
Yeah, Viv Miedemar's on there. She's accumulated 4 XG.
I'm gonna say Elizabeth Turland.
Yeah, she is 3rd, 6.7.
I'm so stressed.
That was my next one as well. What about Ritten Cannerid?
Johanna Ritten-Kaneryd, yep, 3.8.
Who was I gonna say? Olivia Smith.
Yep, she's got 3.5. It's a good answer. There's a few on here that I'm expecting you're going to get. I think you'll kick yourselves if you don't get them.
Oh no. Lauren James.
Lauren James has accumulated 2.8 XG.
Oh no.
You've dodged the bullet there, Izzy, but you do still need a correct answer to win.
I kind of blanked on like what teams exist. I'm gonna say, should I go rogue? Maybe Kiko Seika.
Kiko Seika has accumulated 2.5 XG. Is another incorrect answer. Jacob, you're back in again.
Oh no. This is rogue, and I don't even think it is. What about
16 players left.
Well, it's quite a lot as well. Annabelle Blanchard.
Annabelle Blanchard's got 3.1. Correct answer.
Ella Toon.
Ella Toon is an answer that wings Jacob the round. She's only on 2.6. It's 1-1.
Oh, it's down to the wire.
The players you missed were, I'll go from least XG to most: Melvie Mallard, Leah Galton, Lauren Hemp, Caitlin Ford, Jess Park, Katie Stengel, Rico Oeki, Sjurka Nusken, Katja Snoys, Frida Marnham, Guro Wrighton. She's taking 3 penalties, so I thought she might be someone that you'd get. Rachel Daly again, Aggie Beaver-Jones, Stina Black-Stenius, and then the person with the most that you didn't get on 5.9 was Jill Raud.
So many of them as well I had in my head, and I was like, no, I'll just go for some random other person.
I thought you were going to get, like, between you, you'd get players like Guro Wrighton, Rachel Daly, Aggie Beaver-Jones.
I've got like recency bias because Guro Wrighton's like disappeared, so I've just eliminated her from the rest of the season.
I guess same with players like Lauren Hemp. You wouldn't really think about her anymore.
Yeah.
She's been out for so long. But yeah, so it is 1-1. So into the final round, it's going to be going back to Izzy going first. And this one, I'd like you to tell me any player that has got at least 3 assists in the WSL this season.
Mary Fowler.
Yeah, Mary Fowler is a correct answer. She is number 1 on 6.
Celine Bizet.
Celine Bizet is second on 5.
Nikita Paris.
Nikita Paris has 3. Correct answer.
Grace Clinton. Oh no, she might not.
Grace Clinton is an incorrect answer. Where is she on this list? I can't even see her. Has she got any?
Oh, I don't. That's a horror shout from me. Oh dear.
Grace Clinton is yet to register an assist in the WSL this season. So it's the shortest round so far. Izzy's won it after 2 guesses.
Oh dear.
I'll run you through the players that you could have had. Again, going from fewest to most. So you could have had Katie Stengel again, same as last round. Johanna Rettin-Kaneryd, Jill Roord again, Mara Ramirez, Tony Payne, Sjurka Nusken, Kirsty Hansen, Alba Fugino, Kirsten Kasparai, Mariona Caldente, Asmita Ali, Elizabeth Turland, Rachel McLaughlin, Katie McCabe, Kim Little, and then there were 2 other players that had 5, which were Lauren Hemp and Vivian Sayi. To be fair, Grace Clinton, you would think is a pretty good bet for something like that. She's a very creative player.
You got like 4 assists last season, so I don't know. You would have thought
it was worth a go.
I think this season she's really kind of disappeared a bit in terms of actually just not registering like solid assists and goals. I've been very disappointed. She was on the top of everyone's team at like week 1, and then she's kind of slowly just.
Yeah, she was straight in my team at the start of the season. Now I think I've had 2 defenders and a goalkeeper from Man United for basically since about game week 3, which has served me pretty well generally, other than this week. But we won't talk about that. But yeah, Izzy, well done. That is your winning on your debut for Know Your Stat. Jacob, you'll have to have another go next time. But well done, Izzy, and thank you both for coming on for your second appearance. Second of many, I'm sure. Thank you, listener, as well, for tuning in to Decoding the WSL. If you enjoyed today's episode, do make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can obviously follow all of us on Twitter. We're all relatively active on there, I think. You can also follow Decoding the WSL on Instagram, and you can follow me as well as on Twitter, on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok as well. Thank you, Izzy. Thank you, Jacob, for joining me. Thank you, listener, and I will speak to you at the next one.